why don't we, if you're happy, Reyna, we can launch into it and hear about fair implementation profiles and see if we can get our hand around it and work out how what might be relevant to some of the things we've been working on. I'll shut up now. Please go ahead, Reyna, whenever you're ready.
Okay, so I'm assuming you can see the slides properly.
Yep, all good.
Okay, so basically this is meant to be an overview about the concept of fair implementation profiles and some of the tooling that is set up to support them. I will say that I am done there's actually the Go Fair Foundation actually has a course all about this, and I've finished now the 8 sessions for that, and I still have my homework and my exam to do. So I am still learning and figuring out some of the details. So I might not be able to answer all the questions as I'm still navigating my way through it all. But I think it's a really useful way forward to improve upon fairness and increase the convergence on how we're doing fair within communities and across communities. So and I will say that basically everything here is I've gained knowledge through that course, and so I give credit basically to the Go Fair Foundation for everything I'm showing here. So basically, in a nutshell, a fair implementation profile is a way for a given community, that might be a specific data repository, a federated system, a working group, how you want to define community can vary, but for them to say, okay, this is how we're implementing FAIR for this context, with specific resources that are being used for every single item of FAIR. There's also, and that's basically for how you're actually implementing the FAIR requirements or how you are planning to. So you can also say, okay, we're not doing this yet, but we're intending to use this standard. There's also a way for communities that are not actually doing implementation, but want to recommend the resources. So that might be like scientific unions or ESIP type of things, like people that are having some vetted interest in saying what should be used, but not necessarily actually doing that. And so they have this concept of a reference SIP, which is not highly used right now, but it's something that could very well be an important piece. Then once these profiles are all registered, because this is all public information and a standardized setup, that you can then begin to do queries and look at basically matrices across the different communities that have submitted their FIPs to see, okay, well, where's their convergence? Which ones are using the same standards? Which ones are not? Do we need to, have more crosswalks? How can we drive the interoperability even further now that we can kind of see what people are using? And it's also useful as a resource for those kind of newer emerging data systems that want to make sure they're using best practices. They can also already see what is being well adopted out there. So that's kind of the essence of it, a lot more detail. Work was done by this group to kind of boil down FAIR in more detail to kind of figure out the right questions to associate the resources that you would want to use to. So these are those questions that are asked of you if you're submitting. I'm not going to go into them all in detail, but these are the specific questions that they ask as you're filling out your FAIR implementation profile as to how you're actually meeting it for each of the FAIR components. And then what they've done is there's this concept of a FAIR supporting resources. And within FAIR supporting resources are FAIR enabling resources. So the actual resources that allow you to be FAIR, and then supporting resources are sort of more on the periphery of like, they're not actually the enabler, but they're a supporting resource, might be a policy or something like that. They categorized these different resources as what you can see here, either under technology, a specification, or a policy, and then those darker colored ones are the ones that are more the enablers, and then the white ones are what are just more supporting. So basically every single resource that's provided in this platform is associated to one or more of these categories. They're, a given resource could actually do more than one of these things, and it's definitely possible for a few of these to be categories to be allocated to a given resource. So, everything from the specific identifier service to the metadata schemas, provenance information, licenses, etc. So that's all here. And the fair implementation profiles itself, that's a specification that feeds into this, but I won't dive into that too much. Okay, so then this gives you a sense of the ontology that's used to kind of organize all this information. So can you see my arrow when I move
Yep,
it?
we can
Yeah,
see we can
okay.
see your mouse. Yep.
Okay, so first of all, there's that community that I mentioned. So you actually like define that fair implementation community. So this cluster could be a community, but like any community. And there's an individual that sets that up, so that's that data steward. And then that community says, okay, they declare that they are using some fair supporting or enabling resource to answer one of these questions that I went over in that, well, that I showed briefly in that earlier slide. And then they could say if they're currently using it, planning to use it, if that resource needs to be developed, or they're going to replace something. So there's a few different ways to declare that resource to a question. And you can also specify it's for a particular case study situation, or for a specific digital object type. So there's multiple pieces to that as you dive in. Okay, I'll keep going here. This is sort of a diagram of the different technical components of that fair implementation profile system. You'll see examples of this as we go. But there is, well, we just looked sort of at this ontology in the previous slide. So there's the ontology that underlies this information. There's something called the wizard, which I'll show a few screenshots about, but that's where you actually fill in the information about the FIPS and the fair supporting resources. So that's basically where you curate and submit the content. That gets published to this nano publications server, and we'll also see some screenshots from that. There is a GitHub that's used for the review process. There's a curatorial review process. So once you've submitted something, there's actually kind of the expert who have gone through the training that are able to check that it's been, following the ontology properly and things make sense. And they'll review it, and it'll get refined as necessary if it does need to go around another cycle, or just check off that it's been reviewed. There are templates that help you set up these either fair supporting resources or the fair implementation profiles, which is what's that talking about. And then this Fair Connect is basically a nicer way to view what's been made available by the community with a search engine. There are improvements that could definitely happen there, but they're working on that, and they'll have some more improvements coming over time. But you can also, anyone can also see directly what's in the nano publication server too. Okay. This is just a screenshot of that Fair Connect landing page where you can search. You can see, find out, okay, looking for a particular, if a particular supporting resource is there, want to look for a particular FIP or community, that's fair implementation community. I actually don't really know what FIP is. I haven't looked at that at all. But it allows you to search. There's also other tools here like a dashboard, and also show some screenshots as well. So there's basically a search interface. On the dashboard, this gives you some kind of indication about, well, how many different fair supporting resources have already been set up in the system for each of the categories that exist. So lots of registries, lots of metadata schemas, and it starts to drop down after that. But you can basically see, and by clicking on this, you get a list, like down below, all the list of all those resources will pop up, and you can dive into them in more detail. In terms of the communities that have submitted fair implementation profiles, to some degree, that's drilled down by domain here. So in each case, there's over 1,000 that have been submitted. Now, soil science isn't specifically listed here, but I think soil science is maybe something that we could tease out somehow from what is there, but it's not explicitly a domain here at this level. So that's something maybe to look into for this group. But by clicking on any of these, you can kind of get more information about, it'll pop up down below all the specific community listing. And there's then further ways to filter. But I do think the filtering, searching features could definitely be improved in this Fair Connect. But that can definitely be done over time. The important thing is to have the content, and then they can make the search tools a lot better. Okay, now we're just going to get into examples. So this is an example of one of the FAIR supporting resources. I tried to pick one that was relevant maybe to this group. So here we have the concept of the IGSN identifiers, which I'm going to just try and walk through. This left-hand section is what it looks like in the nano publication server. So I won't go to all the details, but you have this idea. Okay, it is the IGSN ID. It's the fair enabling resource as well as the supporting resource. If you remember the ontology, enabling is a sub-element of the supporting. They're saying it's basically 3 categories: identifier service, which of course is true, registry, yes, and structured vocabulary. Then there's a bit of a description or comment about what that is. This is the label that's basically the name of the resource, which target group it's for, and basically that's the information. So that when individuals are going to set up their fair implementation profile, this is now an option when they're going to say, okay, for something that needs an identifier service, are they using IGSN perhaps? So then we have, just to give you some of that clarity, that each of these resources can be one or more really of these types, whether it's available or to be developed, what is its label or name, like description. There's also more things that you could add that this one doesn't have and maybe should, like website to get more information. Is this, and then you can say, how does this relate to other things that might also be there? So this is a broad match for a parent resource. So there might some cases there's different versions of things, or basically there's other relationships that you can add here. This is how it looks on the Fair Connect page, and it tells you, okay, those 3 types, as well as it's also telling you that 2 at this point, it should be more. This is a emerging thing. 2 of the communities have specified their use of IGSN so far in their profile. And then what is this? Sorry, I'm just trying to remember what I have here. Oh, okay, yeah. This is a screenshot of one of those communities and what that declaration of their usage of that is. And so in this particular, I should have said which repository or which community this was, but anyways, it's saying that, oh, sorry, it's NanoCommons. There's a NanoCommons is one of the communities that's in this system. It's saying it's planning to use IGSN. So I guess at the point when they created this, it wasn't. Maybe it is now. Maybe it's just not up to date. But anyways, they were saying we plan to use IGSN, and that's for this F1 criteria of the FAIR profile for their data. So that's how it just shows them in the kind of the back end. Okay. Next, if we look at the FAIR implementation profiles, basically on this left-hand side, it's just a screenshot about the tool that it's that wizard where they set up, so the community sets up its profile. And I can't screenshot the whole thing, but I have specifically reached this point when the person is filling in their one portion of the FAIR implementation profile where they've mentioned ORCID as the way to meet that particular criteria. And then they can say, oh, okay, it's currently in use by the community. And they say, well, what's the implementation consideration for how they would implement ORCID? And it just goes on and on. So all these questions, all this gets filled in for each of those numerous FAIR profile questions. They can use more than one resource per particular question. It's not limited to one. So when we go to that FAIR Connect interface where we can search and view all of the different contributions that are so far there, this is within, so this is the ICOS FIP 2022. I've expanded out this particular F1 metadata where we see that ORCID, and then they add other ones too, but this is where we see the ORCID that's right here, showing up that they're using it for F1. And then on this next screen here, I can see this is the nano publication view of it, the same thing. So here I'm seeing, okay, this is the ICOS FIP 2022. It's just the very basic information about it. It has this thing called declaration index, and that has its own little identifier. If I go to that particular item in the nanopubs, it has this list. Oops, sorry. It has this very long list. This is a screenshot, but it goes on of the declarations themselves. So these are all the specific declarations across their FIP profile. This is how they appear, and they're all with their own identifier. And I'm just drilling in on this one that's right here and going to that, like if you click on it, then you can get to this particular nanopub that represents this element. And this is where they're saying that we're declaring the use of ORCID for that F1 metadata, and that's consideration. So this is where that information they filled in that form, it gets represented in this nanopub and then displayed on that nicer page. But this is how it looks in metadata. Then what I was talking about, the beauty of it is that once all these FIPs are created, then you can begin to look across repositories. So in this particular, and they have this what's called the FIP matrix. And again, I think there's improvements that could be made in this tool, but this is a good start. So this is the URL to get to this FIP matrix. And so when you're there, you can say, okay, well, which particular questions am I interested in comparing? And I've just randomly chosen some interoperability ones. And which communities do I want to cross compare? And I've randomly chosen these ones. And then it'll list those particular questions. It'll say which resources are being used by those communities and color code, you know, in what way are they using it. So green means they are already using it. Yellow, their future use of it. Blue is they're developing it. So here you can see, okay, well, in this particular interoperability criteria, we have some of the same usage, but then in other areas where there's not the same usage. So there's obviously opportunity. Well, I don't know if these communities make sense to converge, but if we're trying to work on convergence or seeing what's commonly used in particular communities that we're interested in, then we can do that. And you can export these results into a spreadsheet or a CSV if you want to download it and use it and analyze it in more depth or something like that. So it's exportable, but there's definitely other improvements that could be made. But it's a start of like being able to do that cross comparison between communities. Then I just wanted to emphasize that once someone fills in their that information in that wizard, then there is this curatorial process that happens by the experts where they check. This particular example is for a supporting resource, so they check that everything makes sense in terms of how they've categorized it, or if they have the links properly or whatever it is. So it goes through a process by actually two individuals. We'll go through this, and that gives it some credence that everything makes sense with those extra two pairs of eyes. And then if there's needs to be correction, it goes back to the original submitter and they'll make those adjustments and it'll get updated accordingly over time. So just some ideas for maybe what would be relevant to this cluster. Thinking about how do these supporting resources and FIPS relate to this knowledge-based resurgence that's happening? Maybe we need to make sure that where it makes sense, say metadata or schemas or ontologies or something like that. Maybe we make sure that they're represented in this knowledge base with the fair enabling resources sort of linked, or that the fair enabling resources are there. It might be desirable to actually recommend particular resources through one of these, what they call an RFIP. So maybe there could be the ESIP parent organization or of the community, and then the subcommunities could be clusters, something like that, because you can have hierarchies of communities. Maybe that's something to consider. We might want to actually help repositories or systems that have soil data to create FIPS so that they're part of this system and we can better evaluate them. And imagining that there are these FIPS available, then we can start to say, like, do some of that matrix analysis for soil relevant FIPS once that becomes more exposed. So that's just some ideas. So I think that's all I have here. Yeah, so I'll stop. Well, I can keep sharing if I need to go back to something, but open to any questions if I know how to answer them.
That was awesome. Thank you, Reyna. Well, I have a few questions, but I wanted to just see if anybody else does before I hijack the session. So, William or Tanya, did you have anything that you wanted to ask, or any questions or thoughts or anything? Just go ahead. There's only a few of us, so just take yourself off mute and go for it. Sorry, go ahead, Tanya.
No, that's okay. So I was just gonna tell Raina. So I think that the catch that everybody keeps getting caught with on the soils data, and I was trying to look at what was there, just the multiple. It's like you can go back. It's dynamic, so you can go back multiple times to get the same measurement in multiple places, and so in that respect, it's like biology, but there's also the depth perspective, which is where it kind of crosses over with the geosciences. So I was trying to think about how you'd pull the data out of
how you know which domain is relevant, or is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, I mean, it would probably be the earth sciences. I'm guessing that's where it would have been put, unless it's microbiology, in which case it might be in the natural sciences. I don't know. I was just wondering.
Yeah, I did. You know what? Like, it does say, when I looked at the domains, I think I did see soil sciences, but I just don't think that they're necessarily using that. Like, it could be that a repository is not exclusively having soils data, so they have a broader term that they use. And so that's could be what's happening, is that they're just using a broader term. It could also be that we're interested in just certain resources and we're wanting to see who's supplying those resources. So there's other ways to look at it. But I think that is going to be the tricky thing, is to like narrow down which FIPs are relevant for soils in particular.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Cool. Thanks, Tanya. William, I wanted to give you an opportunity just to see. Did you have any questions or thoughts, or maybe how does this relate to anything you're working on? And if not, that's fine. I just thought I'd see. I want to give you an opportunity to contribute if you want to.
Go ahead. I'm good.
Okay, cool. Okay. First of all, thanks, Reyna. This was really good. I have similar questions. Well, I have a lot of questions. One of them related to what Tanya was saying, I think, in that I didn't interrogate the tools. I'm glad that you put the links in the slides, but do you know if there's a way, like I'm wondering if there's a way that you, like a data set assessment tool, right? Like how do I know, is it like a manual search exercise, or is there a way to provide recommendations to me about which services I should use? So each one in the FAIR, and you had the breakdowns on one of your earlier slides, right? Instead of like me going and doing it by hand and trying to like, blindly navigate my way through the space, is there like a recommender or any recommendation engine or anything? Go ahead, sorry.
No, there's not something that's like specifically designed to support that right now, but what does happen is that when you look at any of those particular FAIR supporting resources, you can see how many communities are using it, and you can see which communities those are. So you do start to get like the level of adoption, whether use corresponds to it being recommended. That's sort of assumed, but not necessarily true. But I think that's one of the visions of this whole setup, is that like right now it's kind of still emerging and getting its uptake, and there needs to be more content. Still, I think is the better, like the more important focus right now is like just getting that content contributed. And then these tools, like that matrix is a start of some of the tooling that could be done, but like it's once there's the structure that's there, and there's an underlying structure, then it's not so difficult to build these tools on top of it. I think we just need to kind of develop those use cases and then work with technically we could get the data ourselves and make our own tooling, but also we could work with the FAIR Connect team through the Go FAIR Foundation about, hey, this feature would be really great to have if we can filter in this particular way. So I think that's just a matter of working with them, because I do know that they have some funds coming available to do some more development work to improve some of the tooling, and so they're looking for some of these use cases and applications. So I think that's just something that we need to kind of work with them on. But it's not at that point where they're already in a perfect way. It's yeah.
No, I can appreciate it's a work in progress, right? I was just curious if there were other sort of more guidance mechanisms. You know what I mean?
That is the intent, the end goal, but it's just more to be developed, I think.
Right on. And I suspect, just as an aside, like in the image we were talking about earlier, there's probably huge bins because they're trying to show utility, right? Rather than getting into specific things where there may only be a few data sets, right? That's just my gut. That's just an aside. If you're trying to show how it's useful, you don't want to show super specific things if you only have 2 data sets, right? In that specific area. The other thing, and so this was great because I think I think that's a logical output or outcome of the work that we've been doing, seems to be like maybe a reference profile or maybe more than one for some of the soil information that we've been, or the types of information that we've been talking about, and how to break down what we're doing. So like last week or a couple weeks ago, the last meeting, when we were talking about what different elements that we are wanting to include in different in our what's it called, like facets of metadata, even if we sort of can think in that profile terms, that might help us sort of organize our thoughts, right? And instead of all of us kind of coming at it from scattered, our own experience in different directions, but trying like a North Star type of thing.
Right.
So that's definitely
Or we
something
could
to
even use
consider.
some of the same categories or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to. I'd need to look into it more, but that's definitely an option, right? But even just looking at like that slide you had earlier on, where you had the different, like, does it have a DOI? Does it the where you broke out the F, the A, the I, and the R and it had different sort of examples and sections of things that might need to be included. To me, that was really useful as a like not necessarily a checkbox, but more like a have you considered this, right? Have we sort of considered these options, right? That was my initial thinking as you're presenting those. So that's cool. I'd like to see what Kathy thinks too. And some of the other people that are typically on the calls that aren't actually here today. And I'll just pause for a second. Does anybody else have any other questions? And now I'm just going to open up the floor, because the next bit of after Reyna's presentation, it was just continuing this discussion and thinking about how these fit together, or if there's next steps. I'd be keen to know if the folks that are working on Glossus right now, for example, if they're planning on creating a FAIR profile, because I think this came out of the EU originally, is that right? I know that.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, do you know if that's a review-centric thing, or?
I guess it started with, I don't know the entire history of it very well, but it does come out of the EU, but it's meant to be global. It's been used in that World Fair initiative that happened and is still ongoing. And well, now it's World Fair Plus, but it's been used in international context already, but it is, originating from Europe, but yeah, meant to be global in scope.
Sure. I was just thinking about connections. That's all. Not that. That was why I mentioned the Europe thing. I thought Go Fair originally came out of the EU, which is why I thought, well, maybe. So, like the folks at ISRIC that are working on the Glossus ontology, for example, would they be aware of it? That was sort of where I was going with that already, or maybe. Yeah, I haven't looked at their issue tracker either recently. Anyway, Tanya, did you have anything?
I was just gonna say, yeah. I mean, at USGS there, we have our FAIR standards, so the findable, accessible, reproducible. What's the I? Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank in the I.
Interoperable.
Yeah, it's interoperable.
Yep. It is interoperable. Okay, good. And that's been for a while for science-based, but in theory, it's the push of our metadata. I don't know how our metadata would fit into your schema though. So, and
one thing I'll say too is that they are starting a RDA. I don't know if it's interest group or working group. I assume it's a working group, but in August they're planning to launch the Yellow Pages of FAIR, and it's related to this FAIR implementation profile concept. So there will be a RDA group. That's also like another opportunity for more collaboration about the directions that this will take. So like use cases or needs for filtering or whatever. So that will be getting going in August, which I assume then it will get a lot more uptake globally, and at least in people who are aware of it.
Tanya, that was what I was thinking about when I asked if there was a recommendation or basically a way to, for example, and I'm not trying to commit the USGS to anything. I was just thinking like for institutions that already have a lot of
totally don't
like
have
data.
that power, so go for it.
No, but and ourselves too at was Landcare, now BSI, but we're sitting on massive data holdings, and if there's a way to automate and say like a star diagram or something, and say, here, for each data set, give me a star diagram to see where I fed on these axes, which in relation to this specific program versus just some of the other fair, I guess, literature that's come out, where it's a bit more
Right.
guidance. It's less like, have you done this? It's more, this should be, right? So it's a bit more
Yeah.
interpretable, if you like.
I think our science-based folks have pretty good representation at ESIP and things like that, but most of them aren't doing soils data, so I don't know how commonly it would come up. I mean, they're dealing with a range of data from biological, to everything, like ET, everything. So I don't know, but I would say they have many more data. Where getting them involved would make a lot of sense. And as always, if you don't know who to contact, let me know and I'll find you the right person. But yeah,
Right on.
I agree. I think that this group probably has a wonderful variability or variation of soils data. Yeah, it's pretty great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, again, I wasn't trying to throw any shade, or like the NRCS, like if you wanted to run Sergo through this, right, and say, well, how do we stack up, for example, and having those types of tools, and maybe that's some, I know Gopher has like grant programs and stuff to like help contribute, and I'm just saying maybe that's
Right.
an area we can
Well,
talk
and,
about
and I
later
don't
on.
know who our NRCS kind of rep is. I know that Sky was on a call a little while ago. That's a good question.
No, the only thing that comes to mind is I think because I lurk on some of their GitHub repos, right? So like
Yeah.
Dylan
I
Zipodet
think
and
Dylan is
Andrew.
always a good go-to for this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And again, I'm not saying they should do it. It was just something that I was curious about. If you're like trying to
Right.
fingerprint something, um, there are and ISRIC. I mean, ISRIC's sitting on a shed load of information. If
Right.
they're committing to it already, then how do we sort of normalize that interface? Anyway, it's all hypothetical. It's just the things that I was thinking
It
about as
is,
you were
and
talking, Reyna.
right, and templates are a good way to get started, right? Because then people can tell you everything that they don't like about them, which is part of the process, right? So, yeah.
And okay, so there's that bit, and then the other bit is the types of standards that are implemented, right? So for example, one of the lingering questions that I have is there's one of the ISO has several standards related to soil data, and my question has always been, well, who uses these, right? Because they're not. First of all, it's an ISO standard, but there's nothing that you can take and use, right? Like it's not like it's like a database container, or you know what I mean, with pre-filled in tables that you just populate. It's a document that then you interpret and then implement, right? And so that's been my question, like, well, it's been around for years. I don't remember how long, 20 years maybe, and updated, I think, once or twice. But who actually is there any soil data that has implemented this, right? And I'm not saying there is or isn't, but so when you talk about different types of standards, whether it be metadata standards or your catalog or whatever it is, um, or the types of information that you had, like soil information, the soil data and what type it is, or down to is it a float value or whatever. So the structure, then how does that work in a sort of global multi? You know what I'm saying? And I don't have enough. That's an open question. It's something that I was thinking about. How do you,
Yeah, so
how,
theoretically, if you had like one of these ISO standards and that was listed as it'd be probably a fair supporting resource, not a fair enabling resource, but it could be a fair supporting resource depending on what the ISO standard is doing. But yeah, so theoretically that could be there, and then if a repository or a community is using it, that they can declare their use of it and in what way, and then you could then query and say, well, who's using this resource and for what, and get that result. So theoretically, like this does create an answer to a lot of those kind of questions as content and tooling gets more fleshed out. But it is, I think, a good way that could unfold over time. Yeah.
yeah, um, my question was, so that's great. I was thinking about how do you know which one to use? Because I think we talked about that. We talked about that a few times. Like, should we use Dublin Core, right? Or should we use whatever, whatever standard? And being able to look and see, as you just alluded to, being able to look and say, well, actually, these other soil folks are using this profile, right? Or this standard or whatever. Is that suitable for us? And if not, why? And then let's talk to them and figure out how we make sure our data is compatible. So it's more I mean, that's the whole point of FAIR, right? It's kind of ripping the lid off. But yeah, so I'd be keen to see, as the catalog starts to get filled out, what standards or what kinds of things people are actually using or not, right? Does that make sense? Sorry, I feel like I'm rambling.
Yeah,
Okay.
and well, and as that recommended ones get filled out too, that will be like, then like it could be the unions or whatever that are putting forth, hey, we recommend these, and then those become like a viable way to know, hey, this group is endorsing that, we should try and abide by it. You know.
Yeah, exactly. But because you're putting in your use case, I think they're leaving you an out to say, well, actually, our use cases don't match up. So it's okay if we use different standards, right? But we are using a standard, crucially. Anyway, no, that's really cool. Any other comments, questions? Doesn't have to be for Reyna.